This panel will take a deeper look at the realities of the metaverse today. The panelists will discuss how the community and its customers are currently approaching the metaverse. What is reality, what is hype, and what is truly within our reach? I want to remind you guys to continue to submit questions for the panelists. Text USGIF 22333 or scan that QR code on one of the sides. Because again, I know I had a lot of questions. I was afraid I wasn't going to have enough, but you guys were definitely great. And I know that the panelists will be more excited to hear from you than hearing just from all of us. So let me start off with introducing the panelists for this discussion. We have Jennifer Arnold, who is the professional visualization executive for. Next up, Sid Dixit, Maxar's Vice President of Engineering and Product, and David Sracic, Technical Lead of the Naval Surface Warfare Center of the Carderock Division for the U.S. Navy. This panel will be moderated by Patrick Cozzi, the CEO of Cesium. Patrick is dedicated to advancing the field of 3D geospatial. He's a recognized expert in 3D graphics and mapping technology, open standards, and open source software. Together with Mark Petit from Unreal Engine at Epic Games, Patrick hosts a podcast called Building the Open Metaverse that invites a broad range of technical experts to share their insights on how the community is building the metaverse together. Patrick was also the originator of Cesium.js, an open source JavaScript library for rendering world-class 3D globes and maps. He's been very involved in creating many of the open standards for 3D geospatial data that many of you are probably using already. He's also authored, edited, or contributed to 10 books on mapping, computer graphics, and gaming, and has been teaching computer science for 8 years at the University of Pennsylvania, where he also earned an MSc in computer science, as well as completing a CME from Harvard Business School. Rare downtime, Patrick's an avid reader, boxer, and Philadelphia sports fan. Please help me welcome your panel.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us on a Sunday, nonetheless. We find your showing up here is a huge testament to your commitment to our mission. It's lovely to be here in St. Louis. So unapologetically, I'm a product of the 1980s and the 90s, and we're here to talk about the metaverse, which I think is like talking about the internet in the early 1990s, where some of it is already built, some of it is being built and will be ready for use right away or soon, and some of it's maybe a ways out. Then there are folks that are early adopters, and it's just super obvious and intuitive to them. And then there's those of us who, maybe we're curious, we're still learning about it, or maybe we're skeptics, maybe rightfully so. And then when we look at terminology, think back to the internet of the 90s, the information superhighway, right? And today with the Facebook renamed to Meta, the metaverse term I think is getting some good press, and then also some questions. But I am a big believer that the concepts behind the metaverse of collaboration, innovation, immersion, open interoperability are very valuable to us. So in the last couple of years, as Tara mentioned, I've been co-hosting this podcast where I've been educating myself on the metaverse. Some folks mistake me as an expert, but I really consider myself just a student of the game. And sometimes it literally is a game, and sometimes it's anything but a game. And with the podcast, we brought on about 50 folks so far that are visionaries and builders. So that combination of folks who, they talk the talk, and they also walk the walk. And today, we have 3 fantastic panelists that are just the epitome of that description. They represent industry, they represent government. We're gonna talk use cases, we're gonna talk hype versus reality, and I'm hoping we're gonna get a little geeky as well. So with that said, I'd like each of the panelists to introduce themselves, starting with Dave.
Sure. Thanks, Patrick. Morning, everybody. My name's Dave Sracic. I'm a technical lead out of the Naval Surface Warfare Center in Carderock, Maryland. That's a child command of the Naval Sea Systems Command. In general, I've got one of the most unique jobs in the Navy, and I've been doing it for a little while now, and it's unique because it just keeps changing. My teams are in charge of delivering tactical decision aid software to our warfighters in support of undersea warfare. So if it runs on the waves or below the waves and it does undersea things, it's probably got some of my code in it. If it's supporting from ashore, same story. It really means I have to sit at the nexus of what intel should show up on the map, what weather should show up on the map, how does the organically sensed information show up, and ultimately how does this help somebody position the ship and the sensors to execute the mission successfully. Underpinning all of that is new technology, new standards, and new data types, which arguably says Metaverse.
Very nice. Thanks, Dave. Sid?
Good morning. It's exciting to be here in St. Louis, and especially this is my first GEOINT. I can't be more excited to speak with you all and discuss with this esteemed panel. I serve as Vice President of Engineering and Product at Maxar, where we build multiple geospatial solutions. Prior to this, I have background in consumer robotics at Amazon, building and launching satellites at Planet and platforms, and doing Android software and devices at Microsoft, Google, things. For me, Metaverse has been a continuation of a journey. We started many years with revolution in hardware, software, virtual devices, and now it is starting to expand so much in geospatial world. At Maxar, we build products such as 3D reference mapper for the world. We serve geospatial datum or reference layer for a lot of this. Can't be more excited to share that journey with you.
Thanks, Sid. Good morning. My name is Jen Arnold, and I'm with NVIDIA. I am thrilled to be here with you today. My focus is primarily taking Omniverse, which is our platform, to public sector. And what I'm very excited about, and you heard this from Todd earlier, my background is primarily in modeling, simulation, and training. And over the years, and where we stand now, I think we are at the nexus of being able to take what we've done in the past from a training perspective into an operational mode. So talking with Dave earlier today about some of the great work we're doing, I'm so excited to be here today to talk to you a little bit about that and get you thinking and excited about what we can do in this space. Patrick?
Yeah, well, thank you all for those introductions. So to start things off, we wanted to do a round robin and hear from each of our panelists on, in the context of GEOINT, what exactly is the metaverse? Dave, you want to start?
Sure. So it's a harder question than you think. At least from where I'm sitting, it tends to mean different things to different people. The metaverse, from the perspective of a platform at sea, is the stuff around me that I need to care about. It's not the other half of the world. It's not a global anything. It's what's my allocated water space or my area of responsibility, and what should I expect in it. If you move up a level to the more operational level, it's a bigger chunk of water, and it's an understanding of the same general geospatial temporal concerns, but maybe it starts talking joint and exchange with other services. Perhaps it starts talking about data throughputs and bandwidths, and all of this ultimately still comes down to visualization in a large context, right? I mean, in the end, we still have warfighters that need to look at a display to make decisions. So to me, the metaverse is really the fusion of everything around you in geospatial temporal context that should have an influence on your decision making and your operations at sea.
Very nice.
For me, metaverse is a manifestation of our physical world into a digital construct. It is a digital world where users can interact with each other, as well as they can interact with their environment to do things in a seamless way, which they would like to do. Let's see it from the point of view of users. In an entertainment world, if I'm thinking about playing a Call of Duty with my childhood friends in the same streets where I grew up, that's what Metaverse can deliver. It can place us in the exact same construct, and we can play the games we always wanted to play together. In a more GEOINT community world, it could be a construct where things such as military and simulation environments could be constructed and utilized, which represent the exact physical dynamics of the world without going into those locations. You can drive a truck and experience the bumps on the road exactly the same way as you will experience in the real world.
That was great, Sid. So I resonate with both Dave and Sid's explanations. So NVIDIA looks at the metaverse from both an industrial and an engineering lens, if you will. So 3D worlds that Sid described from a gaming perspective to the operational worlds of joint all-domain command and control. So imagine, if you will, being able to take these 3D worlds and defining the metaverse in maybe different terms sometimes, whether it's joint all-domain, gaming, digital twins, or even live virtual and constructive training. So the term metaverse, I think, can mean a number of different things to each of us, depending upon how we're leveraging it.
This is great. So I'm hearing 3 different perspectives, but I also heard a lot of common themes around 3D, geospatial, temporal, digital twin, but digital twin at extreme accuracy and semantics, but all ultimately trying to aid what we're trying to achieve, decision making. Okay, and before I go to the next round of questions, I did want to remind the audience that we're here to chat with everyone. So please submit your questions, and we'd love to engage with you. But next, Dave, I'd like to talk about just the state of adoption and understanding of the metaverse at Navy.
Okay, so that's a harder question than you think. Navy's a big organization. I think I'd give you 2 very different answers to that, scarily enough. On one hand, we're there and we've been there for a while. If you go way, way back and you're talking World War II, war in the Pacific, you can argue the submarine force was doing metaverse things. I mean, they were fusing data from sensors and observations and maps and uncertainty and making decisions. If you look at Navy today, we've adopted metaverse in a number of different capacities. I mean, I was in a lab 2 weeks ago where there's a group building a new immersive, VR headset environment to train a specific dangerous operation that you don't really want to learn for the first time on the fly. We have trainers that are built in IMAX domes to help crews understand how to navigate safely. We've been doing simulations for the next generation submarines, and they're eye-wateringly detailed and good. I mean, if you think we're designing ships with green engineering paper and straight edges now, you're well behind the times. We've been metaversing that since before it was called Metaverse, right? So on one hand, we're there. On the other hand, we have a long, long ways to go. I get to travel a fair amount, and one of my more recent trips was to go observe a watch floor. And one of the things that you take note of is that decision makers are basing decisions in part on GEOINT type concerns, and the way in which they receive that data just sends a cold shiver down my spine, because they're getting an email which contains a PowerPoint, which contains an embedded screenshot of a Google Earth with a bunch of dots that's been annotated with flyovers and text boxes and some text in a speaker's notes, and you say, okay, so how does that end up influencing the entire watch floor? Then person receives the email, skims it quickly, hits print, hands it to the second class and says, go put that on my cop. So somebody's actually going from the machine readable data to email things, to paper, to human enter the same distilled data into the common operational picture. And in that context, we see the need for metaverse. We're simply not there yet. So 2 very different answers. I know that's not ideal, but it's a big Navy.
No, it's 2 sides of the same coin. And just thinking back, there's a novel, Snow Crash, from Neil Stephenson, which was authored in the early 90s, and that coined the term metaverse. But Dave, I love your perspective, bringing it back to World War II. Again, the concepts underneath metaverse. And then, the state of adoption can be some very forward-leaning, and then some, still on PowerPoint. So thanks for sharing. Okay, so next up, Jen, I wanted to talk about use cases, from a GEOINT perspective, what are the use cases that you think are most prominent with respect to Metaverse?
I would be happy to, and I want to talk about what Dave just
Please.
described. We just realized this morning that Dave and I have mutual contacts that are developing work right now that's directly applicable to both of us. So one use case that we discussed was the use of underwater autonomous vehicles, which we are using to map Daybob Bay right now for the Navy. And what's exciting about this is the underwater autonomous vehicles are using machine learning and telemetry data to determine the bay, and they're learning from the bay. So we basically built a racetrack in the bay that the underwater autonomous vehicles are learning from each other. So, that's just one use case, as well as for the Naval Research Lab, we're actually simulating environments. So everything from a desert to another underwater littoral space to a jungle environment. So being able to virtually recreate these environments and run simulations on that environment, whether it's from a predictive capacity to be able to understand, we'll even take it even higher up. One of our CEO's greatest visions is to create an Earth 2. And I would love to see a show of hands, but I can imagine the majority of you who are here today are in some way discussing the importance of being able to digitally twin the Earth, whether that's from prediction for atmospherics, to be able to understand what is coming, how we respond to that, all the way to take that Earth 2 down to infrastructure within a space, within a country orientation, and I will say even down to an individual and how that individual is interacting with the environment. Another use case that I'm extremely proud of was actually created by Sid's team as well as Patrick's team. We're going to get Dave involved in this, but it's an application that was created for the Space Force. And I believe you heard Christy was talking this morning about interactions in space. So we basically leveraged Maxar's data as well as Cesium's 3D tiles to replicate spaceport operations. So launched a rocket and we're able to tell geospatially what was within that domain and within that area. So taking in direct sensor feeds and creating a virtual world so that we can predict the next time that we do a space launch out of SLD-45, exactly those interactions that could be going on in the space. And those are just two quick use cases. I could stay up here the rest of our time and talk about some of the other great work that we're doing, but happy to discuss those with others as well.
Very nice, Jennifer. So let me build on what Jennifer just said. The first thing, and as a GEOINT community, we think about Metaverse is the digital twin of the Earth. Mm-hmm. Our CEO's vision is to provide the digital twin and true and accurate and precise representation of digital Earth. This is exactly what we have done at Maxar. We have imaged the entire Earth from multiple vantage points over the last 20 years and used that data to reconstruct the precision 3D model of the entire Earth. Now let's see how that applies into real world use cases. The first one I would like to share with you is about Saab Griffin fighter. We equipped sensors, camera sensors on Saab Griffin fighter and loaded systems with our 3D precision data. And by using these systems in coordination, we constructed GPS-denied navigation, which means if you don't have GPS signals, by correlating what video feed you are getting to the digital twin 3D reference model, the aircraft was able to navigate at high speed. Isn't that cool? In tactical warfare, when GPS signals have been jammed, that's battle critical information. Mm-hmm. Another example which we have worked with US Army is One World Terrain program. In this One World Terrain program, using the digital twin of the Earth, we have created a military and simulation environment. So now when a platoon wants to be deployed overseas and they have to fly there, take an Humvee to their base, take a chopper, land it, and climb up a hill to set up a check post, they can do all of that even before making their tour. That enables them to experience the tactical information, get familiar with their environment, and be mission ready even before they have landed, down to the, not only just the realistic mesh, but down to the physics of their environment. These are some of the things which we can enable now.
Excellent. Dave, did you want to chime in on any of the use cases?
No, absolutely. I mean, the idea of being able to model the physics of the environment is critical to us in the undersea domain. I mean, the fact is we don't build submarines with windows. We need to be able to sense the environment, and the ocean is challenging. It's ever changing, and that's definitely applicable to everything we do, and frankly, it's much more broadly applicable in terms of global climate and Arctic and navigation and fishing and a whole number of other industries. That the idea that you can model physics suggests that what you can eventually do is start asking not just what is happening now in 3D space, but what should I anticipate happening in the near-term future? And that's critical to decision making in a number of different areas, Navy included.
Yes, absolutely. So this is why the metaverse is more than hype, is more than science fiction, is we just heard half a dozen or more use cases, concrete use cases where the metaverse can help. If you leave it to a technologist or a geek like myself, I'll show the art of the possible, but now we're really seeing need. So Sid, I wanted to switch gears a little bit and talk about kind of how you see the metaverse evolving in the near term, and what the challenges may be and what some of the innovations might be.
So one of the most exciting things about Metaverse is only now we have all the foundational elements for the Metaverse to evolve, and that process is accelerating. Let's start with fundamental building blocks for the Metaverse. It requires supercompute hardware with GPUs, which is cheap and omnipresent. That's exactly the kind of things first NVIDIA brings it to the table. This is the hardware where the actual metaverse lives in. It's the simulated environment. And by the way, it's not one metaverse. There are going to be multiple different metaverses for multiple different use cases with humongous amount of information. This is where the technologies such as artificial intelligence is playing the crucial role. We only have partial information for this metaverse to be constructed, but technologies such as generative AI are using these partial pieces of information and constructing this full digital twin of the Earth, full digital twin of various environments, whether it's educational, defense, medical, or otherwise. You have foundational artificial intelligence technologies such as computer vision and pattern recognition, which will characterize and catalog this information. But now you have all this information contained on these servers and giant supercomputers. How does it stream out to the end users so they can participate? That's where data pipelines and things such as Cesium's streaming services allow that to connect to the end devices. At the edge node is augmented reality and virtual reality devices, which play a crucial role in rendering this metaverse to the actual end users and allowing them to interact. Whether you're wearing HoloLens to project something on battlefield, or you're using an Oculus VR system to immerse yourself into this virtual reality to interact with your environment place in. And finally, there's a change in user behavior and pattern. A lot of that was accelerated by pandemic, where we learned overnight how to work remotely, how to engage and work together with our colleagues. But more importantly, bringing all these systems together, some of the things which naval tactical warfare centers are doing with battle management system, where you build Cesium, you build the right hardware, and you create simulation environments. That's what you are driving, helps for accelerating the adoption. We'll see Metaverse starting to take off exponentially in next few years to come.
Yeah, so I would pile onto that. I think there's a key part underneath that. If we want to expedite adoption of the metaverse, I mean, the key from where I'm at is the open standards. There are a truckload of good companies doing interesting work, but not one company owns Metaverse, not by a long shot. And for my use cases, the ability to say, okay, this is an open standard, I can learn it myself. Some of them have good YouTube videos now. It can be government engineers, it could be contractor engineers. The flexibility to plug in quickly and customize for our use case, the open standards makes the difference. I don't need to concern contract vehicles and multi-year evolutions to find a performer. The open standards are expediting adoption of the metaverse in my space right now.
I will add the word collaborative, because I think, Sid, you were absolutely describing a collaborative versus a versus, if you will. Because I, for years in the MS&T space, thought this was the holy grail, to be able to track our assets that we're creating, that we're leveraging, whether we're sending those, and be able to reuse those assets. So a single source of entity that we're working together, that developers are collaborating using our open source on assets that we're creating, particularly for the federal government, and be able to reuse those assets where appropriate, whether it's a training environment when you're en route to mission, or whether you're at mission and you're accessing the data that you need. So I think the metaverse, if you will, and these verses of verses will help us do that.
I love this conversation, right? So Sid, I agree that I feel like we're at an inflection point for opportunity and adoption here. And if we think about the open standards here and we go back to the internet, so the early 90s, I experienced internet with CompuServe, Prodigy, AOL, I see some heads shaking.
Yep.
But what do you hear about today? You hear about Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and it was the open internet built on open standards, HTTP, FTP, SMTP, that enabled that level of innovation, of economic opportunity, and really just solving problems. So we had a few questions prepared, but I'd love to see how engaged the audience is, and we have a pile of questions here from you all. Please keep sending them, but I wanted to switch gears and maybe start going through these. This first question I think we started to answer, but Dave, if you had more to add, I would love to hear from you first, which is, how do we ensure metaverse capabilities move from the lab to be adopted and integrated into the daily workflows of operators or analysts?
Okay. So I might become the unpopular guy at the party with this answer. I think part of it is we need to stop saying metaverse. And before I get thrown off the stage, I think I can explain that one. If I look at the National Defense Strategy, the word metaverse is nowhere in there. The National Defense Strategy calls for joint all-domain command and control. It calls for collaboration with allies. It calls for open architectures and open standards. It doesn't ask for a metaverse. So there's some vocabulary conflict as far as how do we adopt a technology. Part of it is how do you advocate for this through leadership and up to the elected officials that approve budgets. And I have no problem saying I would like to have a small investment in some software to deal with better bandwidth shaping and point of joint all-domain command and control. But if I say I'd like the same funding to expedite the metaverse for Navy, I'm going to get the question, why are you building a video game? Part of it is a vocabulary challenge, for sure.
Anything to add, Jen or Sid?
The one thing that I would add is that, if we go back in time, back to when we were introducing gaming into the services. There were questions at the time where leadership, to Dave's point about calling out for gaming, we knew that there was applicability. We knew that there was return. We knew that there was retention and learning and value to using it. But it took time for our leadership to understand that value, start using the vernacular, and even say, yes, gaming is applicable from a training perspective, or even to get us to an operational perspective. So I kind of use those two analogies, if you will, when we're defining metaverse, or if we're calling it, as Dave described, something different, whether it's a digital twin or LVC. But I think over time, as we all hone in on the value of using these tool sets and capabilities and truly see the return, that definition that's so important is going to continue to evolve.
So I'm hearing a call to action here, which is we should use today and the conference this week to talk about vocabulary and to get consistent vocabulary. I think that'd be a great outcome. Okay, so the next question we have from the audience is, if the metaverse can mean so many different things, what do all the metaverses have in common? And we've heard some things around collaboration and open standards, but I'd like to ask if anyone has more that they'd want to share. Sid, maybe?
So a couple of things, right? One of the things which excites me every day about my job is exactly what a lot of metaverse will have in common, which is the true reference data of the Earth, creating that digital difference. But that's just one foundational layer, which we do at Maxar. The other things which are common with these metaverses, the ability of these metaverses to talk and communicate to each other in a machine-to-machine way and machine-to-human way. As much it is important for humans to connect using their endpoints, augmented reality headsets, and connect to it, a lot of this is going to happen with machines interacting. Open data platforms, open systems for communication, fast, cheap compute, not just over internet, but for secure systems and secure devices. That's fundamental. And then common universal languages. Some of these things are so simple, such as USB file format for streaming 3D. But that's the common language we need between these machines to be able to move data at the speed of light.
Excellent. So I'm really loving these questions. They're so good, I feel that you all are actually moderating the panel, and I'm just a conduit to deliver your questions. So next up, I think it's a very important question, and Jen, maybe you could start us off on this. So is the principal role of the GEOINT community to build the metaverse infrastructure?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know if well, why not? I mean, we're describing it from a GEOINT perspective, and we led off talking about an Earth 2. You heard Sid describe exactly what Maxar is doing in the space, and I think we're going to see, I'm very excited to continue the conversations out on the floor and see the capability. Just walking in this morning and seeing the posters of the capability that is there, I don't know if it is the primary, but I think it absolutely should be one of our focal points within this community.
Yeah, so I would agree with you there, in particular because I think there's expertise in the GEOINT community that's critical to getting this right. I mean, I've been working for Navy for over 20 years, and I started as an intern, which means I made an awful lot of mistakes. And if somebody wants to hear the stories, come find me at the social. I will share my mistakes. Some of them are distinctly related to how you put dots on a map and get the right depiction of uncertainty, for instance. And that varies. That's not as easy as you think. But if you're trying to inform tactical decision makers, conveying not just the latitude and longitude, but the uncertainty and assumptions behind it is critical. And if we want to make the metaverse truly function, that needs to be a machine-to-machine thing, not a statement at the bottom of a publication that says, so-and-so asserts with medium confidence that the sun will come up tomorrow morning in the east. That machine-to-machine conveyance of uncertainty might seem in the weeds, but it is critical, and I don't think there's anybody better equipped than the GEOINT community to help describe how that should work.
I would add that GEOINT community is fundamental to Metaverse. This is what this group has been doing for Earth in creating the digital twin of the Earth for many years. We are at a strategic inflection point where it's about bringing all this data together, bringing all this confluence of AI and other technologies together. Most important, precision and accuracy are fundamental to the GEOINT Metaverse. There's no better set of people, expertise, and tool set which we can bring together. This sky's the limit when we all can start working together to make this a reality.
Excellent. Yeah, I love that collaborative nature. We have yet another fantastic question from the audience, and I just wanted to share one of my perspectives before going into the question is, when you think about the internet today, it's decoupled from our devices. We might access it from a laptop, we might access it from a phone, we might access it from our refrigerator, right? So when we think about the metaverse, we may access it from a laptop that we have today, or from a VR headset, or from an AR headset. We may be co-located, we may be in different parts of the world, but we can all access that metaverse decoupled from the device. VR is certainly going to play a huge role, I believe, which is why I like this question. So we'll ask, and Dave, maybe we'll start with you, because we were chatting about VR before the panel, but would there be a need to make VR headsets smaller and more available both for the national security community and broader society?
I think that's an unequivocal yes. I have 2 kids and they like video games, and if you put on a headset and try to play for more than about 90 minutes at a time, at least me, it's eye strain, it's a headache, the thing starts to feel heavy. Personally, I would really not want to have to stand watch in an uncomfortable environment, and have a headset on for 8 hours with the physical form factor they have today. I think shrinking them makes it much more achievable to say somebody could use those for a longer period without experiencing any ill side effects from it. And frankly, if you shrink the form factor, you introduce the possibility that you could have something like an augmented reality in much more confined and enclosed spaces. I mean, if you've ever tried to maintain an engine and you've laid on the sled under the car, there's not room to turn your head from side to side. You put the AR headset on under a Buick and you're just not going to have any success right now. Yeah. I mean, the smaller headsets would absolutely help make VR much more achievable for, not just DoD use, but others as well.
Anyone want to add anything?
Emphatically, yes, absolutely. And to be able to have real-time data streams from a predictive perspective, to be able to make I see this not only within our workday, but also in our personal lives. Dave mentioned gaming. Take that into really your daily activities, your workflows, your design of your day. How do we use this data to help make decisions for more efficiency or increased productivity? I think it would be incredible to have a capability like that.
So I'd like to add some of the more use cases, and this is where things started to bring the pivotal role of geospatial community in evolving the metaverse. We talk about our tactical use cases, mission exercises, simulation environments, and this community has been building up to this point for many years. But that's where it starts to explode and starts to enter the commercial domain, the things which we have built. We talked about the GPS-denied navigations example for fighter planes. But think about the same technology will be applied to autonomous driving system. The same precision and accuracy which tells us where a fighter plane or submarine is going from GEOINT perspective will tell us exactly which lane our self-driving cars would be. Mm-hmm. Isn't it cool? Your car drives you to your restaurant and say, hey, seems like the restaurant is right there on the left and I see a parking spot on the right, precisely bringing these use cases together. I was working in a simulation service using Unreal Unity game engines, and we were streaming 3D tiles, and we created a virtual representation of the world. And the movie industry has started to look at as, hey, we don't need to send people to scout locations for next movie shoots. We can use this virtual reality, which was built on top of a GEOINT platform, to be able to scout locations. And that's the kind of convergence which has started to happen between GEOINT, public sector and defense use cases, and commercial applications of this data, accelerating metaverse adoption.
Excellent. So I'd like to switch gears a little bit. So I know we have some fantastic universities here in St. Louis, and we have many students here with us today. I'm a big believer in education myself. I actually failed spelling in 5th grade.
You too, huh?
And just barely graduated 8th grade. Finally got my act together, and I feel education has been, such a big part of my life. So for the students here in the audience, they'd like to know what folks generally look for in entry-level hires. Maybe we could go down. Dave, would you want to start?
Oh, sure. I look for interest, right? I mean, for what I do, there's very few places you can get an undergraduate degree in oceanography or acoustics. The United States Naval Academy is one of the very few. I'm not looking for deep domain background. I'm looking for people that want to learn and learn quickly. We teach well. We've been doing it for over 200 years. If somebody wants to get immersed in the field, if they have interest in learning quickly, and ideally an internship or some previous experience that demonstrates
coming out, who's it going to?
That is fantastic. That's really the starting point, desire to learn.
Love it. Good.
Well, I think when it comes to entry-level jobs in geospatial and metaverse and all these evolving technology, as a fundamental background in sciences, STEM, is crucial. Ability to be able to program, ability to card systems or create geographic systems. These are some simple things. But like David called out, learn and be curious. That's the superpower I look for in the hires as they are trying to go to it. There's nothing which cannot be learned with a little bit of time, little bit of inclination. And if anything, our world has told us that technology is so rapidly evolving, it's going to change 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line. It's our ability of young members to pick that up and run with it is what counts.
And it's that passion to learn. I have a 15-year-old son, and I don't know what he will be studying in 2 to 3 to 4 years. But I'll add one tactical component to this too for the students that are here with us today. Leverage your networks. Do not hesitate to walk up to any of us this week on the floor or here. Tell us who you are, tell us what your interest is, and make those connections. These are the people, this is the community that you need to be building relationships with. So don't step back, because I can tell you one of the biggest challenges we have are finding those that have the skill sets and the passion. So I'll add a little bit of tactic there. Don't hesitate to walk up, shake hands, and tell us who you are and what you'd like to do.
Can't agree more, Jennifer. We are all here to help.
All right, this is fantastic advice. So we have a timer right in front of us. We're almost out of time, so I actually would like to put all of our panelists on the spot and give them maybe 45 seconds each to share anything you'd like to share that maybe we didn't get to, or just to reiterate any key points. And Dave, if we could start with you.
Sure, hopefully this one's working, maybe not. Yes, no, okay,
Yeah.
We're good. Yeah, I think my final shot would be very similar to what she had just offered. Please come and talk to us. I'm always happy to help. I've been doing this since I was an intern in a co-op myself, so I've been there. I have understood how hard it is to walk up to somebody wearing a jacket and say, hi, my name is. We really are all looking to help, and frankly, in this community, we're all in it together. It's not Metaverse to me, it's really national defense, and we desperately need the brain power and the expertise. So please don't be shy. If you are interested, we are very much interested in talking to you. I think that's all I would have.
Very nice. Sid?
I would like to leave with some thoughts. We have built a lot of foundational elements. Maxar builds foundational true representation of Earth. NVIDIA builds a lot of hardware. We build services to stream and make this data available with new data sets starting to add to the geospatial community. Soon our world will evolve with thousands of satellites and a lot more data sets. One of the thoughts I would like to leave with this group is, what can we build together? There's no limit on what we can innovate and bring to this world. There's a unique opportunity at this inflection point to rapidly accelerate the intersection of GEOINT and Metaverse. I'm excited.
Very inspiring.
Well said,
Jen?
Sid. So I will, it's hard always going third, but I will say that be passionate, be excited. People ask why now? We've been talking about Metaverse since the 70s, if Dave said. We have been doing this technology and capability, but the technology has caught up that is going to allow us to do this. Sid mentioned hardware. You're absolutely right. You probably know NVIDIA from our GPUs, but I will surprise you in saying that 85% of our workforce are software engineers. So we're not just hardware. We're software, we're full on stack capability, and we're working closely with Maxar to envision Sid's vision, as well as Cesium and the Navy. So stay excited, walk up, shake hands, introduce yourself, because this is the community that is going to make this happen. So thank you for your time today.
It's been a ton of fun chatting with everyone. Very approachable and friendly folks here. Please come say hi after the panel, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrick.